Picture standing at the edge of a cliff, except the cliff is not a place, it's a time. The sign reads, "No turning back, appointment with the future." That's the odd, beautiful, and terrifying thing about black holes. They are not just holes in space, they are doors in time. I love telling stories where physics hands you a paradox and philosophy asks what it means. Today's story, what happens when space and time swap rolls inside a black hole, and why the singularity is better thought of as a moment you must reach, not a place you might avoid. Let's start with a star much heavier than our sun. It collapses under its own gravity until, from the outside, it looks like a point of no return. The event horizon, cross it and nothing. Not light, not radio, not your best escape plan, can come back out. Most people imagine a black hole as a cosmic vacuum cleaner. You fall in, you get crushed. End of story. That's a useful picture. But relativity gives us a twist that's more interesting and more unsettling. Inside the horizon, the roles of space and time swap. Far from being a poetic flourish, the statement that time and space swap roles is a way of describing how the directions that count as future and away change once you cross the horizon. Outside the horizon, you can stand at a fixed radius and let time pass. You cannot stand at a fixed moment in time. Inside the horizon, the situation is reversed in an essential sense. You cannot stand at a fixed radius anymore. Moving towards smaller radiuses is unavoidable as moving forward in time was outside. In other words, falling inward becomes as inevitable as tomorrow is inevitable. That is why physicists say the singularity lies in your future. Our ordinary metaphysics rests on the intuition that space and time are different kinds of things. Space is where, time is when we move through space, time moves through us. Places are avoidable, future times are inevitable. Black holes show us a regime where those categories break down. If the universe can flip the axes of its own coordinate system, then the terms space and time are provisional labels like the legend on a map that only works in certain regions. Cross the border, and the legend changes. That invites a radical question. What is more fundamental than space and time? If neither is absolute, what is the bedrock of reality? Is it information, relations, a network of causal connections that sometimes looks like space and sometimes looks like time? Now you might ask, okay, once inside the black hole, I keep falling inward, and that is inevitable. And what will happen eventually? Well, you keep falling until you hit singularity. When we say singularity, we mean a place where the classical equations of general relativity stop making sense. Curvature becomes infinite, and the mathematical description breaks down. For someone who has crossed the horizon, that breakdown is not something off to the side. It is a future boundary, a moment you reach after a finite amount of your own proper time. We can use a little thought experiment to illustrate this idea. You are piloting a spaceship toward a black hole. You have thrusters, cunning, and a stubborn refusal to accept fate. Outside the horizon, you can use thrusters to dodge rocks and storms. Inside, you can still fire thrusters, but no matter how you steer, the coordinate that points to the singularity is the time direction. Steering changes your spatial coordinates. It does not change the fact that the future points to the singularity. It's like trying to avoid aging by walking in circles. You can change your position, but you cannot change that time moves forward. The black hole makes that analogy literal. There is a poetic echo here. We often think of death as a destination. The black hole makes literal the idea that death is a time, a future moment, not a place. You can avoid certain places in life, but you cannot avoid the future. If singularities are times rather than places, maybe the universe is less like a stage and more like a script. The stage is useful for describing scenes. The script determines the sequence. In some regions, the stage and the script are interchangeable. This suggests a metaphysical picture where process is more fundamental than substance. Instead of thinking of the world as made of things that occupy space and persist through time, we might think of it as made of events and relations, processes with causal order. Space and time would then be emergent patterns in a deeper web of causal relations. Philosophers have long debated whether time is fundamental or emergent. Black holes give us a concrete physical scenario where the distinction blurs. They force us to ask, Is time simply the ordering of events, or is there a substrate that gives rise to both space and time depending on context? Here's a metaphor I like. The universe is a book outside black holes. The pages are laid out so you can flip to different places on the page. Inside a black hole, the book rearranges itself so the only possible motion is forward through the text. You can't skip ahead or go back. You must read the next line. The singularity is the last line you are compelled to read. Not literal, but evocative, it captures the shift from spatial freedom to temporal inevitability and nudges us to think of physical law as governing narrative structure, how events are ordered and how causal chains are woven. Now, let's take another speculative detour. Consciousness. There is a curious parallel between the event horizon and certain experiences of awareness. When you're deeply absorbed in crisis, revelation, or meditation, your sense of space and time can collapse. The world narrows, time thickens. In meditation, people report the past and future receding, and the present becoming intense. Black holes do something analogous on a cosmic scale. They collapse the distinction between where and when. Could it be that consciousness and gravity are pointing at the same deep truth? That the universe is organized around events and their ordering, and that our sense of space and time is a derived, context-dependent phenomenon. I'm not saying black holes explain consciousness. I'm saying they provide a striking analogy that invites us to rethink the relationship between mind and world. So far, I have tried to avoid math as much as possible and use plain language and metaphor to convey the ideas. I should warn you, though, that there are limits of these things. Language strains at the edges of our everyday life. Words like place, moment, before, and after were forged in the comfortable region outside horizons. When we cross into extremes, those words fray, metaphors help. Saying, the singularity as a moment is not a literal translation of the math. It's a way to convey the conceptual shift. But metaphors can mislead. So keep physics as the anchor. The claim that space becomes time is a statement about causal structure and general relativity, not a mystical denial of reality. In a way, physics gives us the map. Metaphysics asks what the map implies about the territory. Black holes show the map's legend can change. That invites humility. Our deepest categories may be provisional. A few speculative possibilities can be summarized from this chain of thoughts. 1. Space and time are emergent. They arise from a deeper network of relations or information. 2. Reality is fundamentally processual. The world is made of events and causal relations. 3. Causality is primary. The swap inside a black hole is a reconfiguration of causal directions. 4. Information is the substrate. Perhaps information, not matter, is the fundamental currency of reality. None of these are proven. They're philosophical responses to a physical theory. But they are the kinds of responses that make physics interesting to philosophers and philosophy interesting to physicists. Years ago, I was asked, if you could ask the universe one question, what would it be? I answered, half joking, does it prefer to be described in terms of space or time? Black holes give a hint. The universe doesn't prefer one. It prefers flexibility. It will be space where space is useful and time where time is useful. It will swap roles when the geometry demands it. That flexibility is not a bug. It's a feature. It tells us our categories are tools, not truths. So when you think of falling into a black hole, don't picture a place. Picture a future. Picture an appointment with the inevitable. Picture the universe flipping its axes and revealing that the map you trusted was only a local convenience. That's all. Good night. And watch the horizon.